Hello and welcome back everybody. Today I've got a pumpkin themed what I eat in a week for you. No, I did not have pumpkin for every meal, but I definitely still consumed a questionable amount of this cozy orange vegetable. I'm pretty sure pumpkin is one of those, oh yeah, you thought it was a vegetable, but it's actually a fruit type foods. I mean, I do kind of see it. When you open a fresh Hokkaido pumpkin, it really smells like watermelon. Have you ever noticed that? I ended up focusing on the pumpkin meals mostly, so this video doesn't include everything I ate, just so you know. Also, my week starts out on a Tuesday here because we're just living on the edge here. This first recipe I'm already beyond obsessed with. It's this candied almond pumpkin bread. First, line an 8 or 9 inch square shaped baking dish with wet parchment paper. Set that aside and preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Melt down the vegan butter. I placed it inside a heat-proof bowl, then inside the preheating oven, letting it melt in there for about 5 minutes. In a small to medium-sized bowl, combine all the dry ingredients: all-purpose flour, baking powder, salt, and a bunch of pumpkin pie-esque spices, cinnamon of course, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, and ginger. Or use a pre-made pumpkin pie spice mix if you've got one of those on hand. In a large mixing bowl, combine the sugar, pumpkin puree, vanilla, apple cider vinegar, non-dairy milk, and the more or less melted vegan butter. Then add the dry part and mix that in. Pour it into the baking dish and then bake it for 30 to 35 minutes, or until when you poke it with a toothpick it comes out clean. Leave it to cool while you prepare the almond topping. I basically just followed the candied almond recipe from my last Christmas video. All I did differently this time was chopping up the almonds first. Add all the ingredients to a big skillet. Let it simmer over medium-high, mixing basically the entire time. Yeah, it's all gonna turn dry and sandy at some point, but just keep mixing until the sugar turns liquid again. As soon as that happens, take it off the heat and carefully scoop the mix onto the pumpkin bread, pressing it down using a spatula, not your hands. Leave it to cool until hardened. Cut yourself a slice using a very sharp knife. It's like Halloween and Christmas fused inside one dessert. Alright, moving on to Wednesday, where I made myself this fancy, yet still super simple pumpkin salad. So I cut up half of this Hokkaido pumpkin. I cut it into half moon shapes that were around 3 centimeters thick. Meanwhile, the oven was preheating to 200 degrees Celsius. I placed the moons on a lined baking sheet together with 3 unpeeled cloves of garlic. I drizzled over some olive oil, just making sure everything's coated, before I added some salt and chili flakes. I let these guys bake for around 25 to 30 minutes. Meanwhile, I made myself some tea, chopped up some cherry tomatoes, hello, and talked on the phone with my sisters. For the dressing, I simply just blended up all the sauce ingredients inside my blender. We've got white tahini, lemon juice, soy sauce, more tahini, maple syrup, the now peeled garlic, and some orange juice. And that's it. This was so good. I had a bit of that dressing left over, which I then ate throughout the next couple of days with everything I could find, basically. I've been meaning to make my own food photography surfaces for the longest time, so Wednesday night was finally the night for that. I first went to the art supply store. There was, as you might expect, all these very cool, very hip, very Berlin type people, and then there was me. Anyway, next up I went to the hardware store. The tutorial I followed is by this channel called Hijabs and Aprons. It was super helpful. I will show you the end result tomorrow. Like, not tomorrow, but like in a couple minutes. Thursday's recipe also very much belongs in the dessert for breakfast category, I'd say. It is white chocolate chip pumpkin baked oats. Grease 2 ramekins or little oven-proof bowls. To a food processor, add the following things: the quick cooking oats, salt, baking powder, cinnamon, and all the other pumpkin pie spices. Blend until it's as fine as you can get it to be. Then add all the wet stuff: agave syrup or any other type of sweetener, vanilla, plant milk, the pumpkin puree of course, and a bit of oil. Also don't forget to add some apple cider vinegar or lemon juice. Blend once again. And then divide the batter evenly between the two greased bowls. By the way, if my nails look dirty, then that's just leftover acrylic paint that I couldn't seem to get off. Chop up some white vegan chocolate. You could also go for dark chocolate or even just some chopped nuts or dried fruits. Bake these two for about 30 minutes. You can also use the microwave. Carefully take out the dishes, leave them to cool for at least 15 minutes, and then you can dig in. Alright, and check it out, here's the surface that I made. Beyond excited about this. I already spilled some stuff on it, but I think I can just paint over that. Should be fine. Stuck up in the mud, thought I wouldn't let my fire. Nothing gets me down, it'll make me rise up higher. Sitting quite for what, that'll never get me anywhere. I'ma work it out, see you at the top. On Friday, I made some soup. It's so good, so easy. First, I roughly chopped up an apple, carrots, spring onion, garlic, and potatoes. In some olive oil over medium heat, I first sauteed the onion, apple, and carrots together for about 6 minutes. Then I added the potatoes, garlic, and my spices. I went for thyme, chili, and turmeric here. Then I poured in the vegetable broth and brought everything up to a boil. I let this simmer over medium for 15 or 20 minutes or until the potatoes were tender. You might be wondering, when does the pumpkin come into play here? I had a lot of pumpkin puree left in the fridge, so I ended up using that. Then I also added some soy cream to the skillet. Mixed everything up. I let everything continue to simmer for 2 to 3 minutes, and then just scooped everything up into my blender. Then I added lots of salt, some lemon juice, and maybe a bit of water to thin it out. And that's it. Very cozy soup evening. So I thought I was being really clever and innovative with this next idea. I called it pumpkin spice black tea latte, which I now in hindsight have realized that's basically just a pumpkin chai, but a really yummy pumpkin chai latte, I have to be honest. First, go ahead and make some black tea. You can also just make the tea directly in the saucepan that you're going to be using in a second anyway. To the small saucepan, add about ½ cup of non-dairy milk, some vanilla, the black tea, some pumpkin puree. Use homemade here if you can. A bit of sweetener if needed, and yeah, also add the pumpkin pie spices, of course. Now whisk it all up over medium for like 2 to 3 minutes, and that's pretty much it. As for making the milk foam, apparently you get the best result when you warm up the milk first until it's steaming but not boiling. Froth up your milk until you're happy with the foam. Not sure if this swirly motion here was necessary, but you know, hire me as your barista. Finish everything off with a dusting of cinnamon. This was so cozy. Did some reading, then I went thrifting. I found 2 things. This beige 80s style blazer and this yellow sweater. I'm kind of bummed I didn't buy this t-shirt. It really would have added some spice to my closet. Although it's not pumpkin themed, I decided to film my breakfast on Sunday anyway. It was this random little muesli oatmeal that I had with some grated apple. Sunday's pumpkin recipe though, they're much easier to make than you might think. Let's get into it. To a large mixing bowl, add some all-purpose flour, some wheat semolina, and salt. If you can't find wheat semolina, go for some extra flour. Give that a good mix, and then create this hole in the center of the bowl by pushing the ingredients to the side. Now to the hole, you're going to add the water, tablespoon of olive oil, and a bit of pumpkin puree. This one's store-bought for a change. You can pause this video to read my review in case you're interested. Mix everything up with a spatula until roughly combined, and then transfer this to your surface, kneading with your hands for 8 to 10 minutes. Definitely helps to add some more olive oil along the way. Wrap the dough up in some parchment paper and place it into the fridge for 30 to 45 minutes. In the meantime, get started on the filling. Chop up 2 shallots and cut them up finely. Could have definitely cut them up smaller. Next up, grab a butternut squash, peel it and cut it into bite-sized cubes. Bring a big skillet with a bit of olive oil to medium and let the onion saute in there for about 5 minutes. In the meantime, you can mince the garlic, then add the pumpkin chunks together with the garlic and vegan butter. Let this cook over medium for another 5 minutes or so, and then pour in the vegetable broth and some water. Bring it all up to a boil and let everything simmer for about 20 minutes or until the pumpkin is fully tender and the liquid has mostly evaporated. Season it very well with salt, pepper, a bit of nutmeg, though go light on the nutmeg. I also added a bit of soy cream here. Slightly mash up the pumpkin, taste test, see if you need to adjust anything, and set aside. Now on to rolling out the pasta dough. Cut it in half and work with one at a time. I don't know why I keep forgetting that I don't own a rolling pin. A hydro flask it is, I guess. Not sponsored, though this worked surprisingly well. Roll this out as thinly as you can. Use a glass or a cookie cutter and cut out a bunch of circles. I gave the circles a little stretch before adding about a teaspoon of filling to the center of about half of the circles. I only did a small amount here to demonstrate, but I ended up cutting out a bunch more. Every filled circle you're gonna top with an empty circle and seal each one tightly with a fork. Once you've finished shaping, filling, and sealing all of them, bring a pot of salted water up to a boil. This tiny pot of mine is only able to hold 6 to 8 at a time, so that's what I did. I ended up cooking these in batches. I made some garlic and sage butter here as well. Fancy, fancy. You know, delicate, they're not. I blame that on not having a pasta machine, but they're still insanely delicious. Monday's dinner was definitely one of those low effort, I really need to get rid of leftovers kind of meals. So I turned the oven to 200 degrees Celsius and lined a baking sheet with parchment paper. You know, I had the other butternut squash half left to work with. I cut the pumpkin into chunks. Then I also cut up this sad looking bunch of Brussels sprouts. I removed the little stem and then I cut each one in half, also discarding any of the outer layers that weren't really looking so good. I let the pumpkin pieces, the sprouts, and a chopped onion roast together with a bunch of spices and a bit of olive oil for about 30 minutes, I'd say. The Brussels sprouts were very done afterwards. But you know, also kind of crunchy. I made a quick, super random sauce, combining hummus, soy sauce, peanut butter, rice wine, vinegar, and a bit of water to thin it out. Also added some chopped lettuce here, some chickpeas, sprinkled some sesame seeds over everything, and that was it. This was really yummy. I was so hungry for this. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Actually, I would love to know if you've made it until the end. Let me know in the comments. Are you more of a sweet or savory pumpkin type of person? I think I might be a savory one for this. This is the hardest question I've ever asked myself. But yeah, if you know, let me know in the comments. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. Oh, she slipped right out of my hand.
song to the